Richard Tice is Reform UK's self-appointed shadow deputy prime minister and the spokesperson for energy, business and trade. He's also the MP for Boston and Skegness. Thank you for coming on onto the programme, Mr Tice. Congratulations on your new roles. Does Reform have an ideas problem if it is to be believed that you are now not the favourites to be the next government?
Far from it. And what we announced today is that we've got spokespeople for all of these key areas in running an economy, and I'm delighted being the spokesman for business, trade, energy, including also housing. And I also talked about your question about ideas. One of the things I mentioned that I'll be talking about in my speech in the West Midlands next Tuesday is launching a huge new British sovereign wealth fund.
Yes.
That backs British companies, that promotes and buys British products, that is involved in building hundreds of thousands of affordable homes, investing whether it's high-tech, defence tech, critical tech. This is what successful other major nations have and do.
Well, let's talk about it.
We haven't had that. And this is a new idea and very, very important.
Let's talk about it. Because you're on record as saying you would scrap net stupid zero,
yes.
An industry that supports currently nearly 1 million pretty well-paid jobs. Where would those people go?
It doesn't support 1 million jobs. That's complete nonsense. You need to fire your researchers. The reality is that net stupid zero has destroyed hundreds of thousands of good industrial jobs across this country. It's led us to the highest electricity prices.
Hundreds of thousands of people, 950,000
I'm sorry,
people.
Tom. Sorry, but when you've got a Secretary of State for Energy that is reallocating plumbers and carpenters as green jobs in order to lie to the British people, we're not going to tolerate it. The simple fact is that net zero has led to the highest electricity prices in the developed world. Hundreds of thousands of industrial jobs are being destroyed as we speak, or recently, or in the immediate future. And we've got to have the courage to say that's the wrong course.
OK, so you would put on things like
plentiful energy. We need to use all our oil and gas treasure. We know it works because in the 80s and 90s, we were growing at between 2.5% and 4% almost every single year.
You've talked about a generation tax,
45,
Mr Tice.
Which may or may not include your good self.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't know what that looks and feels like.
You've talked about a generation tax, something that you would apply to renewable energy companies. But 42% of the UK's electricity last year was generated by renewable sources. Those companies are going to pass that tax on to consumers' bills. It's going to make it more expensive.
And the reason that we've got such high electricity prices is because of the vast amounts of subsidies and constraint payments paid to the renewable...
But where are you going to get 42% of electricity generated from?
What we're going to do is we're going to look at much more nuclear, much more gas-fired...
Hang on, the lights need to be on tomorrow. You're not going to stop this electricity being generated by renewable sources, but you're going to tax it more heavily.
Tom, I'm not suggesting we're stopping it. What I'm saying is that we've got to stop any more of these renewables because they are responsible for our highest electricity prices. They are responsible...
But why would you put a tax on it?
If you're going to ask me a question, let me finish it, right? They're responsible for the deindustrialisation of the UK economy. Those high electricity prices, right, are responsible for the fact that we're now in a GDP recession per person. So we've got to get cheaper electricity prices to make our industries and our businesses more competitive. And
where's that tax going to go? It's going to go on my bill.
Tom, we will look at ways to reduce our exposure to the renewable generating industry across the piece. And we've said to anybody who's bid on these AR7 contracts now and beyond, we will not recognise those contracts. They are a lie, they are a con, they are some 30% higher per megawatt hour than the wholesale price for last year, which in itself is too high. So we're going to change course, and that's why, Tom, guess what? We're leading it over the last 200 national polls, okay?
You talk about a sovereign wealth fund.
Despite the attacks from the Westminster literati, out there in the real world, okay, where people have to pay their bills, suffer the higher cost of living, right? Actually, people are saying, yeah, we've got a problem.
No, I understand that, Mr. Tice.
We need better people to run it with a track record of success and experience, and we need to change course on net stupid zero.
Okay.
That's why we're leading.
You talk about sovereign wealth funds. The big ones, the Norwegians, the Saudis, the Emiratis. Guess which area of the economy they have massively increased their investments in? It's renewable energy. The PIF fund, the Saudi fund, has awarded some nearly $9 billion for 15 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity. You talk about a 3 or 4% return on the economy. That would be fantastic. The Norwegians returned 18% on its unlisted renewable infrastructure portfolio last year. What do you know that they don't?
And do you know what the Norwegian people are concerned about? Their ever-increasing electricity bills, despite the fact that they've got huge quantities of oil and gas. They're really concerned about their high electricity bills.
They're making 18%.
The reason, Tom, let me just remind you, the reason why Norway's got a valuable, I think the biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world, because they're of oil and gas, because the state operated a bit like a joint venture with the oil and gas industry. That energy treasure under our feet, offshore and onshore, we need to be using it, extracting it, and that's the way to get.
And they're making. They did. You're right. And we shouldn't have sold it off, but we did back in the 80s.
But a lot of it's still down there, and we should extract it and use it.
Sold on international markets. How do my listeners benefit from that?
Why do you think America's got gas prices of about a third of ours?
So with the state,
because it's not sold on the international markets.
Yes. So the state
is simply not the case.
The state drills it, siphons it, and purifies it.
They drill it and they have long-term procurement contracts and they use it themselves and their transport costs are cheaper. There are a whole bunch of reasons that prove your previous statement a lie.
But that's what you do. You would get a company in to go and drill underneath the North Sea, and it would be entirely for our resources.
Well, if you have long-term procurement contracts between the government, between the purchasers and the producers, that's the smart way to bring prices down. If you have a joint venture, for example, between, for example, a sovereign wealth fund and the producers and the explorers, these are all the sort of things that we've not previously done, that we should previously have looked at, because that's how you get a better deal for the taxpayer. And I'm a poacher turned gamekeeper who is now negotiating on behalf of the taxpayer, saying we've had a rotten deal, we've been ripped off by people who've failed the taxpayer, and we can do things much better.
Would you now scrap the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero? £10 billion budget. Would you get rid of it?
Yes, it's gone. When we win the general election, that department will gone. Energy will be coming into my department, and Net Zero will be for the dustbin.
And those tens of thousands of jobs, they would go to?
Which jobs are you referring to?
The people that work at the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero.
I'm sure those wonderful bureaucrats and civil servants will find some lovely other jobs elsewhere.
What does it say about the UK state schools that all 5 of you went to private school?
It doesn't say anything about our state schools. It doesn't say anything about the 5 of us. What matters is the policies that you come forward with and your ability to actually get them done, because you get the legislation organised and you make it clear to the civil servants that their job is to help actually enact the policies of the elected government of the day and not act as hindrances and blockers.
And whilst we're talking schools, if I may, your view on the council up in Enfield saying to unvaccinated children, you might not be able to attend school for 21 days until you've been vaccinated against measles.
I'm not familiar with the specifics of that story, but the MMR vaccine has been with us a very long time. I've had it, my children have had it, and I'm quite sure that everybody should have it.